A strategic trip. Taiwan's army chief visits the US. Beijing is not happy. Good news, Taiwan's economy is on track for extraordinary growth. Bad news, your salary isn't. True colors. Taiwan's ambassador to Germany reveals his true feelings about the national flag. Robots in the classroom, how tech is keeping classes on track during the pandemic. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Taiwan's army chief is in the US on a mission to bolster military cooperation. His visit comes amid increasing intimidation from Beijing. Rick Lowett reports.
China and Taiwan are at a tense standoff. Leaders are ramping up rhetoric, air forces are scrambling jets, and armies are practicing beach lands. Amid the heat, Taiwan quietly sent its army chief to the US. General Xu Yanpu is reportedly visiting a military hardware expo and mingling with US military top brass, including the commander of the United States Indo-Pacific Command. Taiwan relies on the US for military and political backing to ward off China, and Xu's visit comes as Taiwan must show up support from Washington.
特别是台湾伙伴法跟那个2022年的这个国防授权法里面所着重的是包含美国国民兵跟我国后备部队的这个交流，这一点对台湾发挥不对称的战力会是另外一个新的助力。
And if recent comments from the Pentagon are anything to go by, it looks like Xu's doing a good job.
Our support for and defense relationship with Taiwan remains aligned against the current threat posed by the People's Republic of China, and we urge Beijing to honor its commitment to the peaceful resolution of cross-strait differences. And our commitment to Taiwan is rock solid and contributes to the maintenance of peace and stability across the strait and within the region.
This sort of bonhomie has inevitably angered Beijing. Chinese state media is upping its rhetoric about annexing the island.
The Chinese mainland has no reason to retreat. What we are defending is national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Taiwan's defense minister has played down Xu's trip. He says it's part of an annual exchange program between the two countries' militaries. But as animosity between Taiwan and China intensifies, even a routine visit like this could inflame an already potentially explosive situation. Damon Lin and Rick Lowett for TaiwanPlus.
The IMF has raised its GDP growth forecast for Taiwan to 5.9% for this year, as demand for Taiwanese semiconductors and other tech gadgets soar. The forecast of fast economic growth came despite months of COVID-19 related restrictions, with an outbreak in May leading to the severest measures yet seen in Taiwan. The IMF also revised upwards its 2022 GDP forecast for the country to 3.3%. The Ministry of Labour raised the minimum wage last week, and it can't come soon enough for workers. According to a new survey, many people haven't had a pay raise in years. James Chater has the story.
Economies around the world are feeling the coronavirus pinch. But a new survey shows Taiwan's problem with wage stagnation long precedes the pandemic. A report from 1111 Job Bank says over half of Taiwan's workforce have not had a pay rise in over 3 years. For workers in retail, supermarkets and department stores, the situation is even worse. They reported an average of 4 years and 3 months since their last wage increase. The report comes after the Ministry of Labour last week raised the national minimum wage by 5.2%. The monthly base rate rose from 24,000 Taiwan dollars to 25,250 Taiwan dollars, equal to just shy of $900 US. Some business groups oppose the size of the rise, while others say it wasn't high enough, and that a low minimum wage leads to broader wage stagnation.
You can see that in years where there are higher minimum wage growth, there were also higher median and average wage growth. And therefore, as long as minimum wage remains stagnant, it is difficult for wages across the board to also be increased.
The government last week began its latest stimulus measures to boost consumption in hard-hit sectors. Eligible people can pick up vouchers worth 5,000 Taiwan dollars. Questions remain whether the stimulus will be enough. The service industries with the lengthiest wage stagnation are also those that have been worst hit by pandemic restrictions. Zoom out, and a divided picture begins to emerge. Last week, the Ministry of Finance reported bumper export statistics, with year-on-year growth to September rising 29.2% to $39.7 billion. That rise was driven mainly by semiconductor exports. And this week, the IMF adjusted upwards its forecast for Taiwan's GDP growth.
If you look at the profit growth among Taiwan's businesses as compared to South Korea or the European Union countries, Taiwan's profit growth has actually surpassed that of wage growth over the last 20 to 30 years, which means that there is a pool of savings that businesses can actually use to tide them through this wage increase.
For now, positive GDP growth is not filtering down to average earnings. The minimum wage hike comes into effect on January 1st next year. Only then will we know if it can break the trudging cycle of wage stagnation in Taiwan. Patrick Chen and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's diplomatic envoy to Germany has ignited controversy over the flag of the Republic of China, Taiwan's official name. Xie Ziwei posted what he called his national flag confession on Facebook. He said the Republic of China flag was a tool used to suppress the Taiwanese people, and it is soaked with their blood. Xie also posted a picture of himself with a flag that said, "I am Taiwanese. I stand for Taiwan's independence." The diplomat has come under fire from the opposition Kuomintang, but President Tsai Ing-wen has said she respects Xie's statement. To learn more, Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick asked New Blue magazine founding editor Brian Hugh why many Taiwanese do not feel an affinity with their national flag.
Many Taiwanese don't identify with the Republic of China flag. It's viewed as a flag that was imposed upon Taiwan by the KMT. Particularly controversial also is the fact that the KMT party emblem is directly in the party flag. For many, the flag is viewed as colonial imposition regarding these identity issues, regarding the transfer of the ROC framework from China to Taiwan by the KMT after the Chinese Civil War, but also as a symbol of authoritarianism and a lingering legacy of the party state in this way. And so while there have been calls to change the symbols of government, for example, the Tsai administration has been accused of trying to downplay the ROC flag by the KMT. It still is the national anthem. For many people, I think this is a sticking point.
And the controversy around Xie Ziwei was deepened when he was pictured with another flag, a Taiwan independence flag. So what more can you tell us about that flag?
This is a flag you see very frequently in hipster coffee shops, among young people in independent bookstores and the like. The design is originally from Lao Dan, who is an activist designer who contributed some of the iconic symbolry of recent social movements, anything from the Sunflower Movement 7 years ago to originally the campaign to hold a referendum on what name Taiwan would participate in the Olympics under, and so forth. And so this is a symbol of young people's kind of identification with Taiwan in standing for example, a stance of Taiwanese independence versus the ROC. And so I think a lot of these symbols of national identity in Taiwan are still up for grabs in this way, but it can become a sticking issue between the KMT and the DPP. I mean, you see that in the design of the Taiwanese passport too. When the words ROC are reduced and Taiwan is emphasized, the KMT will lash out at this as an attempt to de-Sinify Taiwan, to push for cultural Taiwanese independence and those similar accusations.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has called on the international community to enhance cooperation and build a community of all life on Earth during his speech at the 15th UN Convention on Biological Diversity in Kunming. Xi announced that China would take the lead and invest roughly $233 million in establishing the Kunming Biodiversity Fund to support the protection of plants and wildlife in developing countries. He called on other countries to join the fund and fight climate change together.
人不负青山，青山定不负人。生态文明是人类文明发展的历史趋势，让我们携起手来，秉持生态文明理念， 站在为子孙后代负责的高度，共同构建地球生命共同体，共同建设清洁美丽的世界。
Pheasant-tailed jacanas have a bad reputation among farmers in Taiwan for eating their crops. But a team of volunteers in Gushing, southern Taiwan, is looking to change attitudes and restore local habitats. Ken Ning has more.
Pheasant-tailed jacanas scan a wild lotus field looking for food. Volunteers working alongside the Kaohsiung Wild Bird Society and local government helped to create this habitat for the birds. In August, the society formed a patrol that is teaching farmers in the city's Meinong district how to protect the animals.
当巡守队好了，就是说你不要挂网啦，不要喂食啦，不会喷药啦，就是叫我们申请。
The patrol has helped farmers understand the importance of conservation, and habitat reconstruction is giving the birds new homes away from farmers' fields.
族群的情况还是不太乐观，然后随着野莲田的数量越来越增加，它们可以觅食的空间也会增加。那对于水生昆虫或者说其他的田间野鸟都是有正向的帮助。
Environmental education efforts such as this are beginning to see returns. The number of pheasant-tailed jacanas in the area is starting to recover after years of decline. And farmers are learning that it's not just possible to coexist with the birds, but also to thrive. Ken Ning for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, is India becoming the new semiconductor manufacturing hub? We'll tell you more after the break.
Taiwan 最有人情味的地方。
Welcome back to TaiwanPlus News. A reminder of our top story. The Pentagon has reaffirmed commitment to Taiwan's self-defense as Taiwan's army chief visits the US. Leaders of the G20 group of nations are promising to avert a humanitarian catastrophe in Afghanistan. The country is facing an economic crisis in the wake of the withdrawal of US forces and the Taliban's takeover. Louise Watt reports.
People in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, queue up for emergency shelters, blankets, and other aid ahead of an expected harsh winter. 2 months after the Taliban took power, Afghanistan is on the brink of economic collapse, with a dire humanitarian crisis only getting worse. The UN's refugee agency says millions of people are in desperate need of aid.
Afghanistan needs an injection of cash in that sense on the basis of humanitarian consideration. That's what's happening inside the country. It's at a breaking point in terms of services and its economy.
While most countries refuse to officially recognize the Taliban, the message from the G20 richest nations is that they won't let the country slide into economic collapse.
Ich glaube, wir alle haben nichts davon, wenn in Afghanistan das gesamte Währungssystem zusammenbringt oder Finanzsystem zusammenbricht, dann kann nämlich auch humanitäre Hilfe nicht mehr geleistet werden. Es ist natürlich immer eine nicht ganz einfache Abgrenzung, aber sozusagen zuzuschauen, wie 40 Millionen Menschen ins Chaos verfallen, weil weder Strom geliefert werden kann, noch ein Finanzsystem existiert, das kann und darf nicht das Ziel der internationalen Staatengemeinschaft sein.
At a virtual G20 summit on Tuesday, the European Union pledged to give €1 billion to Afghanistan and neighbouring countries taking in refugees. In Washington, the White House pledged another $64 million in humanitarian assistance.
And we will continue to take steps to alleviate the suffering of the Afghan people and call on other donors to step up their contributions to help deliver critical assistance.
Washington cut off financial assistance to Afghanistan when the Taliban toppled the US-backed government in August. But it says it is still providing aid through NGOs. Washington and others have repeatedly called on the Taliban to demonstrate a respect for the rights of women and girls before they will recognize their government. But as the economic situation in Afghanistan grows increasingly desperate, donor countries face a delicate task of supporting its people, but not their leaders. Patrick Chen and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Taipei and New Delhi are in talks for a multi-billion-dollar deal that will see Taiwan share its expertise to help India become a new semiconductor manufacturing hub. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick spoke to Tim Culpen of Bloomberg Opinion about what this means for chip making in India and whether India can become the next Taiwan.
I don't think India is ever going to catch up to Taiwan or really be a major player in semiconductor manufacturing. I mean, it's not what the Indians want to hear, but I think that's the reality. But there is something that they can do, and that is they can get in the game and they can learn from Taiwan's experience in other areas. The challenges are just so many. It takes a lot of money. I mean, it takes billions and billions of dollars, but you need more than that. You need talent. You need the semiconductor manufacturing talent. India has very good design talent, process talent, but they don't really have a history of manufacturing of semiconductors. And without that history, it's very hard to foster the talent that you need to develop an industry. There are many Indian nationals and Indian trained engineers who are working in the United States and in Taiwan and other places. And of course, they could go back to India and work there and help develop the industry. But the challenges are just so many that India would need to think very, very carefully about whether overcoming those challenges is possible or even necessary or desirable.
Of course, India isn't alone in dreaming the semiconductor dream. In fact, China has had about a decade's head start in chasing this dream, but has yet to fully succeed. So why has China failed, and what has India learned from their example?
I think the example from China is the you can't just throw money at a problem and believe that you'll solve it. Semiconductors are really, really hard. China spent a lot of time and money trying to catch up, and they've done okay. They're still trailing, and they'll probably be trailing for a long time to come. And one of the reasons why is they don't necessarily have the history of semiconductor manufacturing. And so India is going to face those struggles as well if they try to get into that game. They're going to face the fact that you can throw money at the problem, but you won't necessarily get your desired outcomes. And so India should hopefully learn from China and learn that, you know, money won't solve the problem, and they're going to have to build up a lot more than a large bank of money that they can throw at it.
So if India is unlikely to become the next Taiwan, what would you suggest is a more realistic path for them to move their economy up the value chain?
In the last 20 years, India's brought forth this idea of being a semiconductor manufacturing country. This is, you know, the recent talks that we're hearing aren't the first time. What we're hearing recently is that the Indian government is willing to spend billions of dollars to try and lure some Taiwanese companies to set up shop in India. But, you know, past examples have shown that it's been very difficult, and they've, to put it bluntly, that fell. And I believe that's because they're focusing on the front end. But there's a very important industry and a very important part of the semiconductor supply chain, which happens on what we call the back end, which is testing and packaging of semiconductors. Now, this is an area that does take technical prowess and skill, but it is not as high end and is a little bit more labor intensive than the front end. I think that's a really good opportunity for India. They have good skilled technicians. They've got a very good education system. And so they'd have a very good chance of learning from the Taiwanese on the back-end packaging and testing industry, and they could actually become a viable player in that industry. That would also help the downstream part of the sector. So if India was to focus on the back-end part of semiconductors instead of the front end, I think that's a part of the industry that really will have a good shot.
A US Navy nuclear engineer and his spouse have been accused of attempted espionage after they were caught by the FBI trying to sell confidential information. The couple were arrested after they tried to sell secret nuclear submarine designs to an FBI agent who was posing as a representative of a foreign power. The FBI stated that the couple agreed to send the secrets in return for cryptocurrency payments. They're scheduled for a hearing later this week. The La Palma volcano on the Spanish Canary Islands is still gushing lava weeks after it first erupted last month. Drone footage revealed a river of red-hot lava flowing down the volcano's hillside, consuming everything in its path. More than 6,000 people have had to evacuate their homes on the Atlantic Ocean island, including a further 700 who were ordered to abandon their residences on Tuesday. So far, more than 1,100 buildings have been destroyed or badly damaged. Heavy rainfall from a tail of a tropical storm has caused a section of road to collapse in eastern Taiwan. The section of road connecting the counties of Hualien and Taidong was severely damaged. It happened in the early hours of the morning and no one was hurt. Typhoon Kompasu passed to the south of Taiwan on Tuesday. The storm has killed at least 11 people in the Philippines and has forced businesses and schools to close in Hong Kong and Macau. Remote learning has become a way of life during the pandemic. In Taipei, one elementary school has found a way to keep learning on track using technology. Peachy Chuang has this report on robots in the classroom.
Chen Mengxin went to the United States for summer vacation and could not make it back to Taiwan before the new school year started. But that doesn't mean she has to miss class.
像我们要玩一个游戏，就是要来猜生字，然后老师这边已经帮大家分好组别了。
Mengxin's classmates can see her on the big screen while a robot takes her place in the classroom.
我们把这个机器人叫做小佳，就是它可以跟着我身上的这个是感应器，对，就我如果比较高，它头就会抬高，然后比较低就会比较低，左右旋转。
Through the robot's lens, Mengxin can attend classes virtually, and she can take part in group activities as though she were physically present.
就是可以跟同学互动，然后呢，又可以就是用猜语词的方法，然后呢来就是认识这些字。
Teachers say it's a challenge to teach during this unique time, but technology can help keep the whole class on track. Peachy Zhang for TaiwanPlus.
It's not just the phone booth Superman has come out of in the latest version of the superhero saga. In a soon-to-be-released comic series, Superman has come out as bisexual. Jonathan Kent, the son of original Superman Clark Kent and Lois Lane, is seen kissing a same-sex character in a DC comic book to be published next month. The Australian writer of the series, Tom Taylor, says the Twitter reactions to the character's development have been mostly positive. To send a warning to the world about plastic pollution in the oceans, a town in Indonesia has built a museum entirely out of plastic collected from beaches and rivers. Environmentalists built the museum using more than 10,000 plastic waste items, such as bottles and straws. It aims to convince people to examine their carbon footprint and limit their use of plastic materials. Reducing plastic waste will help cut down ocean pollution, protect marine life, and prevent the non-biodegradable material from entering the food chain. Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus. We'll leave you with some images of the green northern light dazzling in Canada. Stay safe and see you next time.